Welcome to the third edition of the Week in Motorsport. I'm joined today by our roving correspondent, Rob Widdows, who's very kindly joined us from the South Coast. So thank you very much for that, Rob. I hope you're enjoying your coffee. We'll deduct you for that later. We'll be talking today about Formula One, the Malaysian Grand Prix, what happened there between Hamilton and Alonso and the penalties they received. We'll be looking ahead to the Chinese Grand Prix, and then we'll be crossing the Atlantic to the IndyCar Series and also talking about the new Mini that's planned for the World Rally Championship this year. Right, well, Rob, I think, Formula One, we've got to start here. The Malaysian Grand Prix, Vettel romped away with it again. I mean, I'm not going to say it's boring, but surely someone's got to try harder to challenge the guy.
Oh, okay, first of all, I think it's anything but boring. I think it's already looking like it's going to be a really terrific Grand Prix season. I thought Malaysia was riveting race, fascinating, particularly because of the tyres. I have never seen tyre wear like it. I've never seen the whole track covered in lumps of rubber apart from the racing line. It was an unbelievable sight. And Vettel, yeah, I mean, well, look, he's got the best car. He's a very good driver. The team is working beautifully well, so they're winning. And but I think McLaren will catch them, and I think Ferrari will catch them. And I think that as we go through the year, maybe when we get to Europe, Vettel will have a bit more to think about.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people at the moment are talking about the Hamilton and Alonso penalties they received when they were racing. I mean, personally, I think they were probably just penalties because yes, Hamilton was weaving, but I think Alonso having clips at Hamilton's car, that was penalty enough. He had to pit for a new nose. The problem is Vettel at the beginning of the race, he was also weaving, wasn't given a penalty. So. Well, what's going on here, Rob?
Oh, good old Formula One. Oh, I mean, this is archetypal modern Formula One, isn't it? You did that. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. Look, hey, I thought there were no penalties involved in the incident between Alonso and Hamilton. In my view, Alonso misjudged the overtake. End of story. Vettel weaving at the start. A little bit, maybe. But come on, it's racing.
But, I mean, if a driver's constantly changing his line going into a corner, surely we're waiting for an accident. I mean, it'll be monumental.
Yeah. Okay. If it's dangerous, weaving, that's a different story. I did not personally see dangerous weaving in either of the cases you've mentioned.
Okay, so we were talking earlier that, Pirro, who's a very, very level-headed racer, and, he's very clear on what racing should be. He was a driver steward, so I suppose we should probably accept his decision.
Well,
surely.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because if the stewards say it's a penalty, it is a penalty. If they don't say it is not. And for me, it's so simple, because now in lots of global professional sport, there is not enough discipline. I mean, if you look at what's happening in the English Premiership, football Premiership, the players are out of control. I mean, they're arguing with the referee every weekend. They're remonstrating with the referee. This just shouldn't not be happening. They should be given a red card. And in my view, whether we think the Alonso, Hamilton or the Vettel off the start line was or wasn't a penalty, we are not the stewards. They are. And they can always appeal if they want to. Yeah,
I mean, I think we were going to talk about this later in the show, but I think we've got to go over to the IndyCar race in America last weekend, where Scott Dixon was complaining after the race that Will Power was pushing him onto the grass at all the restarts. I saw the race and I'm not 100% sure that he had a case there, but is this the same problem that we're seeing?
I think it's the same problem because let's remember, look, it's motor racing at the highest level, at the highest speeds, between supposedly extremely competent drivers. And when we have people saying, you pushed me on the grass, no, I didn't, you squeezed me out, etc., etc., look, it's a motor race. They're battling for the win. In that particular case, I would have said there was no case at all, actually. I mean, okay. But then, I'm sorry, but my view is that they should be allowed to race and they should be allowed to get into a bit of this stuff as long as it isn't overtly dangerous to them or, in my view, more importantly, the crowd.
Yeah. I think you should be writing a letter to Jean Todt.
Well, yes, I could write to Jean-Todt, but I don't think he'd be very interested in what I have to say. No, and I do think, though, honestly, Ed, that there's a lot of this happening in sport generally, not just in motor racing, and I think it's bad. I think it's bad for the spectator. I think it's bad for the image of the sport. What we don't want to see constant arguing, and actually. There's going to be plenty of argument about the DRS system, the movable rear wing, in my view, because a lot of the times on certain cars it doesn't function. And you can imagine what's going to happen there, can't you? When somebody doesn't win the race or does win the race, and there'll be an appeal by the loser to say his wing wasn't working. So that they need to sort it out. Yeah,
or heaven forbid the DRS stays open when they're going around a high-speed corner. Anyway, well, let's move on. I think we've got to mention Nick Heidfeld, who didn't have a great Australian Grand Prix, I think it's fair to say, but really came back this week and showed everyone why Renault employed him. I mean, a good weekend for him and a good third place. Yeah,
I think what were Renault going to do? Who were they going to get? Heidfeld surely was the obvious choice, was he not? He's so experienced. He's a terribly competent driver. And he drove extremely well in Malaysia. I mean, lots of supposed superstars, in my view, didn't drive that well in Malaysia, by which I mean looking after their tyres, making the right calls on the stops.
Going to name some of them for us?
Well, I personally don't think it was a great race for Lewis Hamilton. I'm not in the car, I've never done it, but to me, Button got that race spot on. Now, I don't know what Hamilton's problems were, but certainly it looked to me as if he was a bit at sea with the...
I think especially with the harder compound. His third stop, he put the tyres on and he just went backwards. And he was swamped by everyone. You see he had to push harder than he could. And that's when he came off the track and Webber went past.
One thing I do think's intriguing, Ed, is the Renault's clearly a pretty good car. And if they've got any money to spend, then I could see them, being up there this year. And I hope they are, because, the more the merrier, up at the front. We don't want just McLaren, Red Bull. We want Ferrari in there, and we want Renault in there, don't we? And, I think it's clearly a good car. He drove very well. So did, Petrov was brilliant in Australia. He made
catastrophic mistake, perhaps.
It wasn't catastrophic, was it? But it was a misjudgment. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think sort of now's a good time to look forward to China this weekend. McLaren had closed the gap considerably to Red Bull after the Australian Grand Prix and last weekend. Is it going to be close? They're bringing more updates for the race. Will McLaren be able to get pole position? Because at the moment, the last few races, it's been Red Bull, Red Bull, Red Bull, Red Bull.
Well, as far as I understand it, should you be on a flight to China either in the past few days or the next couple of days, the seat next to you is liable to be taken up by a piece of carbon fibre or a piece of titanium. This is the pace of the development race, as I understand it. The cars we saw in Malaysia won't be the cars we see in China. I'm talking about the top teams here. I'm sure the Hispania will be pretty similar to how it was in Malaysia. But what did you ask me? Oh yes, look, I think McLaren were clearly a lot closer in Malaysia, but not in the race when you think about it. Vettel won pretty easily,
and he didn't even have KERS.
Apparently not. No.
Although I did see the bar going down a little bit on the occasional lap.
I don't know if we want to talk about KERS.
Well, we
the
covered
very
it last
word
time.
is anathema to me. Oh, good. Okay, fine.
Yeah. So we don't want to slaughter it quite yet.
I wasn't going to slaughter it, but I was just quickly going to say. Well, I'm saying it now. Is that I can see its application on a road car, but I cannot see its application on a racing car. And to me, I think it's a distraction in Grand Prix racing. The DRS, okay. We asked for it, really, didn't we?
Yeah.
Well, no, we did.
Yeah.
But KERS, I think I know a lot of the engineers are not keen on it. A, because of the expense. B, because of the huge complication of it. Especially really good pure engineers like, say, Patrick Head or Adrian Newey. Yeah. But in China, that straight is so long. That's the longest straight of the season. So it'll be interesting. Yeah. See what happens.
Yeah. Right. Well, there's a new Mini. There's a new kid on the block. The World Rally Championship is, I think, looking a lot healthier, in my opinion. But the big question is, Mini, it's a very British team. Okay, there's German funding behind it. But is it going to be able to compete with the Citroens and the Fords?
Well, it's a BMW, is what you're trying to say, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's ProDrive who've done the work.
Yes. It's a ProDrive prepared, engineered BMW Mini.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, I love rallying, you know. I'm biased here because I adore rallying. I love watching it. I love going to it. IRC, WRC, you name it, because I just think the skill in the car is out of this world. Will the Mini get on terms? Well, we don't know, do we? I mean, if I sat here and pontificated about that, people would think, well, how do you know? Well, I don't. But what we do know is that ProDrive, if anyone can make that car work, ProDrive can. Yeah. We know that. A lot of the guys there are the guys from the Subaru days, and they're very, very good people indeed. The engine we know is good. It's a very nice BMW engine, that. People have said to me the car looks quite big. I don't know really what they mean by that, because either it is or it isn't. But I sort of do know. I mean, it does look quite chunky. But it's been going very well in testing, and Chris Meek is a hot driver. I mean, Chris Meek's good.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. I might be wrong, but I do seem to remember you saying that the weakest link of the Mini World Rally Championship campaign were the drivers.
Yes. Well, I might have said that. I also said that I made some terrible other mistake last year, didn't I, with predicting something that wasn't ever going to happen. Yeah. I said Michael Schumacher would win a race last year, didn't I?
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. I think what I meant was that we know Chris Meek. Let's take him. Is fast. We know he's extremely quick over a stage. I think what I meant was he does crash quite a lot, like Colin McRae used to. And he can't afford to do that if he's going to win lots of rallies for Mini. I think that's what I meant. But people who know have told me that, you know, the guy's very, very good indeed. So maybe I should change my mind. Well, no, I'm not going to change my mind yet, because we'll see what happens. Danny Sordo, I don't know anything about Danny Sordo, so I can't talk about it.
Okay. Well, Rob, thank you very, very much for coming all the way up from the coast and joining us for this short little show. And hopefully see you next week or the week after.
That'd be great. Thanks, Ed. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
You've been watching Rob Widdows. I've been Ed Foster. We've been Motorsport Magazine. Thank you very much for watching.